Yeah, question.
Say like, okay, but my religion is not inflicting harm on you, or like if I want to be in a homosexual relationship, that's not doing it to you. It's like a completely different thing. You now can't bring in like harm on other person because that would. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So.
This whole dimension of like, well, it's not doing something against another person.
Okay, yeah. So in other words, the person might respond by saying, well, the example of the phone situation is where you're hurting somebody else because you're taking their property. But with regards to maybe homosexual behavior, you're not hurting other people. Now, first of all, that's an assumption that I think would have to be proven on their part, that homosexual behavior doesn't hurt other people. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, would beg to differ vigorously that homosexual behavior is not hurting anybody, because the vast majority of new STD infection rates come not from the heterosexual community, not from the intravenous drug abuse community, but from the homosexual community, because according to their studies, and this is all available on the CDC website, available to anybody, the fact of the matter is that 1 in 5 people, 1 in 5 men who have sex with other men in 21 major US cities have HIV, and about 64% of those aged between 18 and 21 do not even know they have HIV. So they are infecting other people with a deadly disease. Now, it's the CDC, which is a pro-gay, pro-homosexual, I mean, it's not like they're advocates of that, but they're affirmative of homosexuality, saying that homosexual behavior is indeed harmful to the culture because it's hurting other people. How could you say that, oh, well, it's just consensual? It is hurting other people. And they post literally almost every month a study that shows that they are hurting people. So the first thing I'd say to the person is, well, wait a minute. Your example is a bad example because arguably the secular pro-homosexual source is not saying that homosexual behavior is not hurting anybody. It is. But second of all, it doesn't matter whether it's hurting anybody or not because now they're just invoking this new condition on their own. Why does morality restrict it only to what hurts other people or not? You've just created this moral rule that what is right and wrong is simply a matter of what impacts other people. Well, they just invented that out of nowhere. That's not what God thinks. So now they might be an atheist, they don't believe in God, but then if they don't believe in God, where are they getting their standard of morality from other than, guess who? Themselves. And they've just now invented this rule. Well, what's right and wrong is dependent upon whether it hurts other people. Well, that's nice that you think so, but there's thousands and millions of other people who disagree with you. So who's going to adjudicate between you and everybody else? So this is the problem with moral relativism. It just leads to absurdities, okay? People can talk like moral relativism is true. They can say what's right and wrong is up to each person, but they can't live like it because moral relativism is an unlivable system. The moment someone violates their rules, all of a sudden, oh, now that rule is incumbent upon everybody. Oh, well, that's nice, you know. You're a relativist when it comes to things that don't affect you, but then when it does affect you, now all of a sudden, you're an objective truth believer. So they can't live consistently with it. But we can also take the roof off of religious pluralism. Okay, remember the idea that all religions are basically true. And again, let's follow the steps of the taking the roof off tactic. Let's adopt that rationale just for the sake of argument. Let's just say, okay, yeah, it's true that all religions are basically the same. Okay, what logical absurdity might that lead to? What logical conclusion might that lead to that might cause us to question the rationale here? Is there anything contradictory about that notion all religions are basically true? Yeah?
Religions contradict each other.
Okay, yeah, religions contradict each other. Can anybody think of an example? Yeah, go ahead since you answered.
Some say there is no, like atheism of course says there is no God, and Christianity says there is God. And differences between Islam and Christianity, I think basically any other religion is different.
That's right. Yeah, if you take any two religions, really any two religions, and just get past sort of the superficial things that the religions say, when you get down to their core fundamental issues, they contradict each other in radically different ways. And so, for example, I guess the way that I illustrate this, one time I was talking to somebody, or talking to a group of people about this, and I asked them, I said, hey, look, can you guys tell me what you think my mother looks like? And they're kind of like, what? I'm like, just guess. Now, none of these three guys have met my mother. So I asked a guy, I said, well, what do you think my mother looks like? He's like, well, I don't know, 5'3", weighs 130 pounds, he's got black hair. I go, okay, good, thank you. And ask the second person, what do you think my mother looks like? I go, I don't know, 5'5", 150 pounds, brown hair. I'm like, okay, thank you. What do you think she looks like? I don't know, 5'7", 170 pounds. I'm like, hey, easy there, it's my mother you're talking about. And she's got blonde hair. Blonde hair? Like a Middle Eastern person came out of a blonde hair? Okay, whatever. Okay. So then I asked him, okay, now, can all three of you be right? Can my mom be 5'3", 5'5", and 5'7" at the same time? No, of course not. She only has one height. Can she weigh 130 pounds, 150 pounds, 170 pounds all at the same time? Can she? No, of course not. She only has one weight. Can she have black hair, brown hair, and blonde hair all at the same time? Oh, jeez, yeah. There's always some smart aleck. Yeah, okay. Yeah, she goes to a salon and asks for that do. I'm talking about like black all over or brown all over. No, she can't, right? She's only got one height, one weight, one color of hair. Well, the same is true when it comes to like what you said about different religions. Different religions have different ideas about what God is like. Some religions say that there is only one God. Some say there's many gods. Some say God is personal. Others say God is impersonal. Some say God has a son. Others say God does not have a son. You could just go down the line and find that different religions have different ideas of what God is like. Well, can there be one God and multiple gods at the same time? No, there's either 0, 1, or multiple, but all three can't be true, right? God is either impersonal or personal. God either has a son or he doesn't have a son. He can't have a son and not have a son at the same time. When you die, either you turn into eternal nothingness, or you're reincarnated, or you go to heaven or hell. But you can't do all three when you die. You only do one of those three options, right? And so that's just a few issues. There are many issues that religions contradict each other in fundamental ways. And if all religions are basically true, then mutually exclusive, contradictory ideas must also be true. But that's absurd. That's right. The reason it's absurd is because the rationale that led to that absurdity is itself absurd. And that's why taking the roof off works in this case. So Christianity might be false, but it can't be the case that all religions are true. Now, of course, I don't think Christianity is false. I think it's true. But, I mean, I'm willing to grant that logically it's possible Christianity is false, but it can't be that every religion is true. That's the most illogical statement. Now, one of the reasons why the culture has bought into this idea about morality and about religion is because they've bought into what's called, I believe, the tolerance trick. Okay? They've adopted a new definition for the word tolerance that is incorrect and unhistorical, meaning it hasn't been used historically this way. And oftentimes, if you say someone else is wrong or you say another person's religion is mistaken, you'll be accused of being what? Intolerant. That's right, intolerant. And nobody wants to be called intolerant because that sounds bad and we don't want to be called a bad name. But the reason why people call you intolerant is because they're completely confused about the notion of tolerance. You see, the definition that the culture uses primarily for tolerance is agreement, right? If you agree with some person or some person's behavior, then you're called tolerant of them. But if you disagree with their behavior or who they are, whatever, then you're intolerant towards them. And of course, that sounds really bad. But again, this is not the way the dictionary defines tolerance, or historically how we've used the term tolerance. Here's what the dictionary says. The real definition of tolerance is, quote, to recognize and respect others' beliefs and practices without sharing them, to bear or put up with someone or something not necessarily liked. In other words, tolerance, the real definition, means disagreement with their views or their behavior while still respecting the person. Notice, on the true definition of tolerance, you have to first disagree with someone before it makes any sense to tolerate them. You don't tolerate people you agree with. They're on your side. You only tolerate those people you disagree with. And so when it comes to Christians, it turns out Christians are the most tolerant people in our culture because we have moral convictions, we have views about how we should behave and how others should live and so on and so forth, and we make assessments and judgments about other people's behavior. like regarding homosexuality, like abortion, like Islam. Yet we still respect the individual homosexual people, or the individual people who commit abortions, or the individual Muslims. At least we ought to, and if we don't, that's a big problem. But the point is that Christians typically love and respect the individuals despite disagreeing with their behavior or their ideas. That, my friends, is the true and really only definition of tolerance that makes any sense. So Christians are the only ones that can be credited with the virtue of tolerance. The people who are for homosexual behavior are not being tolerant. They're just agreeing with people. And that's fine, they're allowed to agree with people, but you can't credit them with the virtue of tolerance because you have to first disagree with someone or the idea before it makes any sense to tolerate individuals.